What is up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and these are my favorite metal albums from the month of March. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Alright, first up we have Wolf King and their new album, The Path of Wrath, via Prosthetic Records. This is a Bay Area blackened hardcore band that hit the scene hard with their single Deathless from their debut EP Into the Infinite back in 2016, and then followed this up promptly in 2018 with Loyal to the Soil. Now I gotta say, this is their best album to date, and I am so frustrated that it is getting slept on, because my experience has been that every time I get somebody to listen to it, they go in, they come back, they're like, holy shit, this fucking kills. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, if you try this, I guarantee you, I almost guarantee you, I can never fully guarantee anything, but I almost guarantee you, you will love this album. It is so fucking hard. It slaps. It's just an amazing pit-worshipping fusion of blistering vocals and bruising riffs. And if you are already familiar with their previous material, this leans more heavily into the band's extreme side than ever before. It's as bleak and cold as Norwegian black metal, but also hits hard like Code Orange, or it's got that metallic hardcore vibe going as well. Personal favorite ragers on here, Messenger of Death and Sanctuary. That one in particular has some great scream-along moments. Also some more doomy experimental portions like The Oath, Incantation, and Grief Portrait. Again, this is the album that either everybody loves or just didn't listen to it. Nobody hates it. Next, we have an even deeper cut with Estuarine and their new self-released EP, Nyarlathotep. That's a real bitch to say, too. Estuarine is a one-man experimental and technical blackened deathgrind project based out of Tampa, Florida, previously releasing their self-titled and also Sic Erat Scriptum, both of which I highly recommend you check out, and you can find them on Bandcamp. This new EP is a concept album loosely based on the H.P. Lovecraft creature of the same name. Guess he's some like mediator between man and God, responsible for all of Earth's chaos, appropriate for right now. Great attention to detail as always, and then highly technical, highly skilled, and proficient playing. It goes by so fast, I had to rewind it several times just to get all my thoughts in for the review process. But in any case, Estuarine has proven itself time and time again to be a master of composition, and this album is definitely no different. Check out tracks Prophecy Denial, Hooves of Oblivion, Broken Subordinates, and Plains of Rotting Creation for my personal favorites. And again, this thing is 10 minutes, so what have you got to lose? Then we have Reaper with the Atonality of Flesh from Iron Bonehead. This is a Swedish blackened thrash metal band that hit the scene hard in 2019 with their debut demo Ravenous Storm of Piss, and the next year's follow-up Unholy Nordic Noise. Keeping the content flowing 3 years in a row, the Atonality of Flesh continues the band's raw worship of all things Bathory and Venom. That is what you can expect from their sound. The album's brimming with high-energy thrash riffs and D-beats alongside a sickly Obsu-esque black metal croak. And while not resembling anything that represents strides forwards in the genre, the Atonality of Flesh is the perfect time capsule of late 80s first-wave black metal just the way we like it. Like this review, it's short, to the point, and simply gets the job done. Personal favorites on here, Dogs of the Crumbled Firmament, The Sweetness of the Wound, and Through With You. You can thank me later. Next is Stortrain with Impermanence via the Artisan Era. This progressive and melodic death and blackened death metal band previously made waves with 2018's Emptiness Fills the Void and 2016's Singularity. These guys draw from a large array of influences, including progressive technical death metal, 90s Swedish black metal, old school heavy metal, and also jazz. So as you can expect, there's some amazing musicianship on display here, especially in the guitars. These guys fuse the sharp hooks and atmosphere of Dissection with the progressive chops and acoustic detours of Opeth. This album is highly expansive and always shifting its approach, so there's never really an opportunity to lose interest. There's always something new just around the next corner. It's like a seemingly endless wellspring of ideas that once again never loses sight of genuine feeling and engaging songwriting. Especially highly recommended for the musicians out there. Then there's Examinus and their album Marionettist via Clonosphere Records. This band started in 2015. It's a French symphonic death metal band created by former students of the Music Academy International. And the results on this album rivals even the heights reached by the likes of Septic Flesh, Karish Angren, Dimmu Borgir, and Flesh God Apocalypse. It's a truly righteous collision of death metal and classical orchestration. It's filled with infectious, chugging, squealing guitars and imposing death growls. It's very whimsical, too. That seems to be putting off some people. If you're less into kind of the Karish Angren, almost like carnival, sometimes even kind of silly, campy vibes, you might not like this one as much. Personally, I really love that. It often has that Danny Elfman flair to it. Reminds me a lot of watching older Tim Burton movies. Blasts of brass, strings, and choral synths. And all of this perfectly woven together into these pretty large compositions that are quite impressive again for a debut outing. And not to be left behind, the guitars often take center stage too, with some really great riffs and absolutely ripping solos on almost every song. This is a massive sounding record that delivers so many memorable moments and just a deep well of talent that comes across in every instrument and the overall production. Next up, it's Grind of the Dead with their new independent release, Formless Death. I also recently did a podcast episode with Alex because we've been in communication over the years, and it was fun to talk about our favorite grindcore bands and albums, as well as this new outing. So yeah, full disclosure, Alex and I are kind of buddies. But regardless, I really had a good time with this. I think people should check it out, especially if they're into grindcore. Formless Death is just a no-holds-barred slice of bitter and sardonic grind to the core. That sounds appealing. You should definitely check it out. And really, it's the perfect reflection of the shit show of a year that we just had. 15 tracks over 27 minutes, it wastes no time in vomiting forth its raging tirade of blast beats and riffs. And as much as I love Napalm Death's more experimental takes on the genre with last year's Throes of Joy and the Jaw of Defeatism, sometimes you just want to be beaten to death. And there are also some interesting dynamics to find here with tracks ranging from 10 seconds to over 5 minutes on the closing track. Personal favorite tracks for me, Feral Jaws, Selfish Wounds, that bass break, man. Like Rats and Gnawing Loss. Then we have Brand of Sacrifice and their much anticipated new album Lifeblood. This is a Toronto-based deathcore band who have already made a big name for themselves with just 2 prior releases in The Interstice and Godhand. Godhand even making number 20 on Billboard's Heatseekers albums chart. They've also hit up the Summer Slaughter tour alongside Carnifex, Cattle Decapitation, and The Faceless, and hit the stage with Shadow of Intent. This is their biggest and most crushing outing so far. You get several guest appearances too from members of I Prevail, Immure, Traitors, and my personal favorites with Shadow of Intent and Viscera. Lots of great singles on this one, Demon King and Animal especially, and then the title track has this raunchy bass groove to kind of close things out with. That thing is crunchy. And then across the board, great hooks, massive symphonics. There's some choral elements on here that really elevate a lot of the compositions. Has some Born of Osiris-y electronic elements as well. It's just an all-around good time. Like this is the album I probably listened to the most this month. In fact, I've got that album right here, right next to me. But yeah, if Lifeblood doesn't at least get you interested in digging deeper into the genre, there's probably no hope for you at this point. But I'm pretty confident that this will go down as one of my favorite deathcore albums of 2020 overall. Maybe one of my favorite metal albums. Next up is Mork with Catadralen via Peaceville Records. Mork is a Norwegian black metal group, with this album representing the 5th chapter in their Darkthrone-inspired foundations. I recently covered this band on the Best of Bandcamp series, so you can check it out there along with a ton of other bands. I try to put that series out almost every week. And then Chris did a full written review on metaltrenches.com if you want to hear even more in-depth thoughts on this. But overall, I was recommended this from one Tolkien fan to another was the way it was put. And I think that's a good way to put it. There's a lot of very strong Tolkien influence on some of these songs, but also mixed with some very early Enslaved. In particular, the raspy vocals remind me quite a bit of Grurtle. There's also some folky, clean singing. And there's a pretty decent rage, too, in kind of the overall style of these tracks. From black and roll to depressive, dark, and dingy kind of doomy tracks. I've said it a few times now that there hasn't been a lot of black metal that's come across my plate this year so far that I've really enjoyed. But this one actually caught my attention. It really got me going. I'm hoping that I hear more, because going back to like 2017, 2018, there was a ton of black metal that I really loved those years, and just a few releases last year so far. Not a ton here, but Mork, doing it right. Definitely check them out. And last, we have Cryptosis and their debut album Bionic Swarm via Century Media Records. Cryptosis is a brand new band based out of the Netherlands, uniting the raw thrash aggression of Power Trip with the progressive influences of Dream Theater. I was super into these guys because they dropped a split with Vector, had not previously heard of them, got to hear their 2 tracks, and honestly, I think that was my favorite half of that split. Those tracks are on here, so you got Decipher, which is the perfect album starter, pure thrash aggression, chaotic tapping leads, wall-to-wall riffs, very attitude-laden vocals again, kind of like Power Trip, ripe for sing-alongs and scream-alongs. There's even some little classic 80s thrash falsettos thrown in there. But what's even more impressive that I did not expect is they showcase this broad dynamic range on other tracks like Prospect of Immortality. This one being a more like plodding, doomy, almost industrial kind of chunky bass groove along the lines of something you'd expect to find on a Godflesh record. A lot of the tracks expand into these big progressive landscapes of shifting drum patterns, shrieking solos, and proggy exotic sounding guitars. So really brimming with atmosphere, but never sacrifices the heaviness of the genre. Personal favorites, again, Decipher, Prospect of Immortality, but also Transcendence and Death Technology. It's also only a 38-minute runtime, so this is a near-perfect album for me. It is tight, it is to the point, yet somehow it manages to expand. In a way, it kind of reminds me of like Doctor Who with the TARDIS.
He's gonna follow us.
It looks small on the outside, but once you get inside, there's a lot more going on that you didn't expect. Especially for a debut, Bionic Swarm is a highly impressive outing that I generally would expect of a much more seasoned band. This is another one too where it could honestly go down as one of the best albums in the genre this year. Alright y'all, and that is plenty, I think, to cover for this month. Just a tip of the iceberg, really. There are so many other albums that I reviewed this month that I checked out that I did enjoy. Some that I did not enjoy at all. If you want to hear me hate on some records, wasn't a big fan of the new Distant album. Definitely was not a big fan of the new A Day to Remember album. But stick around, I got plenty more videos coming right after this one. Not even just these album reviews, but also tier lists, interviews with bands on the podcast. You name it, we've got it. So plenty of reasons to subscribe if you've not already. In the comments too, let me know what your favorite album was this month and why. And don't forget to hit the like button. You can also join us on Discord and support on Patreon. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.